Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today let's go over the market and see what happened. We had quite an interesting day today, quite the pump today. Now, it's not surprising today was green, but I will admit it's surprising how green it is. That I did not expect to be this green, at least not yet. I did think we might get a little bit more red first, or at least like more red in the first half of the day than more green. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is today was a massive green day. Tesla up 6.17%. Putting us just shy of $825, which is actually quite good. That's quite a run today. So I did sell that put, like I said. I said I sold it yesterday. I believe I sold it yesterday, and I bought it back today again. The premium is horrible, so I mean I made money obviously, but it's really just not that much in all honesty. It's kind of sad because the premiums are just horrible. Like the VIX just getting absolutely pummeled. However, it did break out, and it is kind of, trying to reconfirm this breakout. So we'll see what happens with this. This will be quite interesting. But nonetheless, let's take a look at Tesla and let's take a look at what we can potentially expect. So the first thing I want to pay attention to is first a few things essentially from what we talked about the previous days, especially yesterday, I think it was too. But essentially, how yesterday I said two things. Number one, I said that we could potentially be forming a bull flag, right? I drew a rough example of what it could look like. And it seems like, this actually, this could be it. It could be something like this, right? The bull flag, again, very well could be forming something like this potentially, right? Give or take. So, of course, we'll have to see how it plays out, of course, right? There's so many different ways this can go. But ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if we essentially form a bull flag here. So, in other words, I would be pretty surprised if we don't start pulling back from here. I would genuinely be surprised. Tomorrow we have the GDP numbers coming out. If that's a negative, then we're technically in a recession or a technical recession. Could pull the markets back. I did buy one SPY put just for the sake of it, honestly for the sake of trading at this point, because the market's kind of boring in my opinion. But I'm personally expecting a pullback. We'll see what happens, of course. Now, for Tesla specifically, right, if we can rally up to... If we can somehow get above $840, then we would have to potentially reevaluate what we're looking at here for the short term. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But I would genuinely be surprised if we don't get some kind of pullback. Facebook reported earnings, you can see, is down about 4%. SoFi is down 4%. So the market is pulling back a little bit here after hours from the earnings. Tomorrow we have Apple, Amazon earnings as well. Which, I mean, if Apple has a bad earnings, this market's not gonna be happy. Let's just say that. So we'll see what happens there. But again, ultimately, just based on this way this is looking, I'm expecting a bull flag to be formed, aka another move downwards. And I think this move right here coming up would potentially be the move that I've been talking about, being that 750 to 740, somewhere around the that general range is what I've been waiting for. Another thing to note that's interesting that I did talk about before that has the potential of happening, which seems like it might be, it's hard to tell still, but it's something to consider, is like I said, if we do rally back up to this around 840-ish level once again and get rejected, if the RSI doesn't at the very least come up to the same level that was here, ideally even higher though, if it doesn't do that, and if we come up to 840 and the RSI sets a lower high, that is technically now forming a bearish divergence, especially if it gets rejected from there. So that's something that's, we want to be looking at. So you can see here, we got, not too far from it, right? We got to about 827-ish or so, almost 830. I mean, about 10 points-ish shy of this high. And the RSI seems to be a little bit lower than, maybe you'd want to see it at that level. So I'm just saying, that is something to keep in mind, that there is potentially a bearish divergence very slowly, just in the very early stages, starting to form. Something to consider. But I personally believe that even if a bearish divergence in here is already starting to form, this is just the very early stages of it. I still think it'll take a while to actually, truly form and truly play out, aka probably somewhere at the end of next month, being August, right? So that's kind of what I'm considering. Just thought I would mention that again, kind of a food for thought, if you will. So we'll see what that turns into nonetheless. But that's the main things I'll be looking out for at the very moment. Again, main things that we look at over here, the EMA 21, well above that. The Bollinger Band still chilling at the green line, a little bit longer than I expected. We actually went way past it, you can see up here. So we were severely overbought. That doesn't happen very often, to the point where we literally just go above it. So that's kind of something to consider. That's a little important. We got rejected straight at the green line today, or at least, we're kind of at it, but we did kind of get rejected a bit. So, again, I personally would be genuinely surprised if we don't get some kind of pullback here, but you never know. This market, the 50 moving average, well above that, 200 moving average, we're actually starting to approach it. I still wouldn't consider that something to, look at just yet, but we'll see if the time comes to it. At the moment, it's not very important in my honest opinion, and the 10 and the 5 are still, we're still well above them, especially the 5 or the 10. So that's obviously good news as well. The volume here is going to start getting potentially a little bit thinner, so we'll see how that decides to play out. Again, as you can see, the volume kind of, the thickness of it, if you will, ends pretty much around this level that we're at right now. So if we can somehow make it past here, I think we can get a decent rally. But like, again, I am expecting a pullback here. I am expecting a pullback. I'm expecting a fall. I'm expecting this bull flag to form, and then I'm expecting us to rally probably once again somewhere up here. So ultimately, we go from here down to probably somewhere around here, probably like early August. This actually plays out pretty well, in my opinion, in all honesty. So again, pretty much, I think we will fall back down somewhere to around this kind of 745-ish level very early August. Like, we're sitting right now on the 27th of July, so pretty much in a week from now. Pretty much in about a week from now. I wouldn't be surprised if we visit the mid 700s. Form the bull flag. That'll be the fourth touch point, being a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. We rally out, and then probably somewhere in the end of August, somewhere around here, we touch this touch point here, which also happens to coincide perfectly with the top of this this high that we already had, being the 840, which also coincides with the being top of this bear flag that we're still in ultimately, that I've been talking about for weeks at this point, which will be not only a confirmation of the bear flag, but also a confirmation of a potential double top. Two quite bearish signs actually ultimately. So just something to consider. We can look back at this video a month from now and see how right or wrong we were, but at the moment, that is what I'm personally leaning towards, and that is what I'm personally expecting to happen over the course of the next 30 days, let's say, roughly, give or take, right? So something like that is what I'm expecting to play out. So that's very, very important, guys. So make sure you're looking out for that, and make sure you're not being too greedy. Another thing to consider here, of course, as you can see, as the RSI is making, is going quite low, even though the stock didn't go that low compared to, what we were over here, relative to the RSI. We came up very similar level again, almost that was over here, but the RSI is making a substantially lower high, which isn't good, of course, right? That is, to me, signaling that we're going to get an ultimate pullback, which I still personally believe will just be the pullback that forms this bear flag. The 15-minute, you can see on a slightly shorter time frame, as I kind of take a look at it from my first time now that the market closed, it's making lower lows. It made a lower low here. Even though the stock is still all the way here, right, which is much higher than what it is over here, which the RSI was still sitting, in a fairly healthy, okay range. So that's something to consider. That is somewhat of a bearish divergence, though it did make a decent high over here, which kind of coincides with how much lower this is than this. It's not that much worse. So not the most convincing bearish divergence just yet, but it does seem like it is trying to form it. So to me, again, the ultimate thing I'm personally seeing, guys, again, like I've said so many times throughout this video, is I genuinely expect a pullback. Like I'll be very surprised if we don't get a pullback here. Like, again, tomorrow's GDP numbers could be a fantastic reason as to why that happens. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see, guys. We'll see. The VIX looks like it wants to run a little bit here. It looks like it wants to potentially bounce off of this level. The SPY looks like, not looking bad, actually. I do like the fact that it came up this high, but you can see this red line is essentially a new resistance that it essentially got resisted by. So now it ended below it. It did make a higher high, which is actually not too bad, which is why I'm still personally wouldn't be surprised if the market has, a bit of a rally potentially. But with that being said, the market, we did this red line here that it has had a fake breakout before, so keep that in mind. I personally think something like this might happen again over here, just a slightly different structure, where ultimately the SPY most likely comes back down to retest this breakout that we just had, and then probably does another run up, potentially maybe even higher or something like that, right? And then ultimately something like that. That's kind of like more or less what I would expect to happen, right? Similar to what we had here, where it kind of came out, had a nice retest, ran up, made it seem like, it's good, perfect retest, beautiful stuff, time to rally, and then JK, just kind of plummeted right back in, and quite aggressively too. So I personally would be not surprised if something like this happens again here. Not the exact same fashion, but the idea is similar, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. QQQ, still in this bear flag. Nothing too crazy to talk about QQQ here. It's just kind of, respecting this little situation, this little channel, if you will, that it is in. So we're going to see how this plays out. It does have a nice, beautiful gap way down below, of course, at 294. So that I'm sure will want to get filled at some point, but doesn't have to be instantly. It doesn't have to be ever technically, but I do think it will get filled. It'll probably just take some time. But ultimately, guys, that is what I'm currently seeing. So let me know what you think about it down below. And yeah, I'm expecting this. the easiest and most concise way to put it, I'm expecting a pullback to form a bull flag, which then will rally us into the late August, which then will get a pullback, get the bear flag confirmation, get a double top, and then most likely get a fairly harsh movement to the downside. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Let me know what you think down below, but I'll see you guys for the next one. Thank you for watching. Peace.